right, well, let's call the meeting to order here. A little bit of feedback. I don't know where that's coming from. Seems to be this. Should we do the roll call?
Right. Committee member Ruiz?
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Simon?
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Sampath could not attend this evening, and committee member Reed has stepped down for personal reasons. Committee member D. Alexander?
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lang?
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Burtis?
I'm here. Great. Let's pledge allegiance to the flag. The flag. States of America.
To stand. This is wrong.
All right. Do we have any public attending or comments or emails?
We do have a member of the public online that has their hand raised, Jody Timms. So Jody, I've allowed you to speak and you can go ahead with your public comment.
Okay. Good evening. This is Jody. Tim's Fairfax Climate Action Committee. Can you hear that reverberation? Maybe just I do.
Well, a little bit. It's not too bad in here.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to pop into your meeting and say hello. I chair the Fairfax Climate Action Committee and also facilitate the monthly meeting where we have representatives from all the five climate action committees or commissions or sustainability commissions. Phil has attended often, so it's always nice to have an update from Corte Madera on what you guys are up to, and we share that among all the cities. So this summer, I also wear the hat of 350 Marin, a nonprofit. We have a student, a college intern. We have three of them, but one, he and I have been going to all the meetings of all the committees or commissions and just really trying to sit in and see what folks are doing and kind of he's getting an exposure to what's happening in climate, in local government and nonprofits for the summer internship. So anyway, I just wanted to say hello, and I appreciate everything you're doing on behalf of climate. We're all climate champions. So thank you. And I'll just be listening in. I doubt I'll have any comment, but if I have anything I want to add, I'll just raise my hand. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Jody. Nice to connect with you. It's been on my to-do list to come to one of your meetings one of these days. So make sure I did meet your coordinator recently at a tour of Phil's building where we looked at the installation of his EV chargers. So it's great to have more connectivity between the councils. Thanks for dropping in.
Thank you.
Right. Any other public comments?
This time I don't see anyone else with their hand raised on Zoom, and we didn't receive any other emailed public comment.
Okay. In that case, we'll close the public comment period and move to approval of the minutes. Hopefully everybody got a chance to read them. Any comments on those? Nope. Okay. Anybody want to move to approve them?
I move to approve. Yeah, second.
Second. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Nope. Bill, with the time delay, it looked like you were protesting, but I don't think so. So, okay, those are approved. Yeah, there is a bit, it's interesting. There's a bit of feedback at the 5 kilohertz or something.
Yeah, if everyone could just try and maybe mute their mics when you're not talking, that might help.
Yeah, I think they are. But, okay, well, we'll manage.
Apologies, I'm not an expert on the AV system. So
no worries. Great. Okay. Well, first order of general business is an update really on the various efforts around promoting multifamily EV charger installations. There's been a fair amount of work going on behind the behind the curtains here between Karen, Phil, myself, and Phoebe. I don't think we have any presentation materials today, Phil, unless you are going to surprise us. So in that case, I think it's just kind of updates on what people have been working on. Phil, perhaps you'd like to go first and just give people a sense of what you've been up to. I think you're on mute. We can't hear you, unfortunately. I think you're muted, Phil. Can you check on your end?
Is that better?
Yep.
Is that better?
That's better.
I don't think I'm muted.
We can hear you now.
Okay. I corresponded with Carlene Cullen from Cool the Earth. I think at our last ad hoc meeting, I told you I'd get back to her, and she got back to me and said she didn't say anything about her presentation, but she did send me some information about, from the CEC, including 2025 EV sales by county in the state, and also a webpage that I think I forwarded to you, Pat and Phoebe, called chargeathome.org, which is a instrument that property owners can use to, get some information about the steps they need to go through to set up multifamily EV charging. She also said that Cool the Earth might be interested in supporting our effort with outreach and education if funding is available. So my next step is to get back to Miles Smith, and I thought we ought to determine whether MCE will be involved. I think there's plenty of room for that. If they're going to do it, it'd be good to have a practice session with one of their techs.
Yeah, are you referring to
off each other's knowledge?
The Marin Property Owners Association presentation? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I would get back to Miles about, and then he would introduce me to the secretary of the Property Owners Association. That's my next step. But before I take that step, I thought that it would be good to have, to determine whether MCE will be involved. And then I noticed your email, Pat, that gave a lot of signs of hopefulness among people who, might be supplied with chargers, and that would they'd be eager to. What you said about 62% of them responded that they would be eager to buy an EV if they have a charger at their parking place. So
I can talk to that in a few minutes.
So that's about all I have to say about that. I just thought we'd need to determine whether MCE will be involved before I get back to Miles about my presentation.
Okay. Have we asked, I think we asked them if they wanted to participate, right? I don't remember what Sebastian said.
Yes, I did reach out to Sebastian regarding both the postcard collaboration possibility and the speaking possibility, and we have not received a response from him. So I can ping him again after the meeting and just send him a reminder email.
Okay, that'd be great. I mean, I think from my point of view, it'd be nice to have, be nice to have MCE involved if they're willing to do it. And we're technically supposed to allow for public comment here, sorry, before we start discussing this. So is there any public comment on this topic?
I'm not seeing any hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any email public comment for this item.
Okay. So I think Karen was about to say something. So
Yeah, sorry, the procedure. I think it would be great if, MCE has the incentive, and it would be great if they could be there to promote it. But I think it would also be good if you can create an outline of the presentation and where MCE would fit in. I think that would kind of help to sell them on their participation. And the more we can flesh out, I think the better. Maybe even have a online rehearsal too. Make sure we coordinate.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I'd be happy to meet with one of their techs if that can be set up and maybe discuss that if they're going to be present.
Could you put together an outline of the presentation?
You mean prior to meeting with MCE?
Yes, just leave a space for where MCE would present, or if in their absence, we could just do a brief outline of their incentive and give a.
Sure, I could do. Sure, I could do that.
Great.
And Phil, have you discussed dates with MPOA?
No, I like I said, I needed to discuss to talk with Carleen Cullen before I got back to Miles, who's going to make that introduction for me. So I plan to do that next week.
Okay, great. Anything else on your end, Phil?
No, thank you.
Okay, Karen?
Okay. I guess we did have a conference call with MCE. Is that after the last meeting or was it before? I'm kind of forgetting after. Yeah, kind of discussing their participation, a bit more about their incentives, which have increased. And we had hoped to use their database of bill payers, kind of trying to reach people who pay the power bill as one possible decision maker. But MCE is a bit protective of that. They're okay about issuing a joint communications, whether it's postcard or email, but they would like to retain those addresses themselves, so they would send it out. We think we could send something to the property owners from the Corte Madera database, but we need to have a second round of discussions with MCE to confirm that. And Phoebe and I've just started a very rough draft of a postcard, really trying to emphasize the message. Tenants look for EV chargers. That's a real attribute for people choosing an apartment. So along those lines, and we'll go to maybe we could even reference the most recent research, but that's the gist of it. We're trying to kind of make it a business thing and then also show the MCE incentives. So it's a work in progress, but one step at a time. Anything to add, Phoebe? Yeah.
I think you covered it. We're mostly waiting to hear back from MCE.
Okay, great. I mean, it feels like, based on the conversation with MC, it feels like a good moment to be promoting this, I think. They've actually increased their incentives to, was it from 3,500 to 4,500 maximum per charger, which is very significant. So, and I think it sounds like they're still exploring new ways to do their outreach and kind of amplify their mission. So I think we can hopefully find a good partnership with them. It seems like a good opportunity. So for my part, I was mostly researching just to see what literature and surveys there are out there to actually show a causal relationship between the installation of EV chargers and people actually buying EVs. Because I think we all sort of assume that that's the case, but it doesn't necessarily have to be so. I would say so far the data is encouraging but inconclusive in terms of what I found. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence, as you would expect. But I have come up with a couple of good studies. One actually that I just circulated today to the three of us. I may ask, if people are interested, I can ask Phoebe to send it to everybody with the proviso that we keep it internal because we don't have permission to use it externally at this point. But It's a survey done by a charger company called Switch, which focuses specifically on multifamily households or multi-unit dwellings. They surveyed about 1,500 residents across 4 cities nationally. Quite good. As Phil referenced, there was a couple of very supportive data points. One was they asked people who didn't have EVs, how likely are you to get an EV? And they split it into people who had chargers in the building and who didn't have chargers, and maybe it was a hypothetical, but in any case, those who had or hypothetically had chargers were 2.5 times more likely to say they would buy an EV. So at least the intention was there. And there was another twist on that, which was for those who were in buildings that didn't have a charger, they said, if you had a charger, how likely are you to buy an EV? And 20% said immediately they would buy one. And another 20% roughly said, my next car would be an EV for sure. So there's good, evidence. I think there's also some, let's say, correlated data that says buildings that have chargers are more likely to have a higher percentage of EV owners. But I just want to make sure that we're headed down the right path here before we make a big effort on this. That same survey that I just mentioned, though, also did talk about the reasons that people didn't have EVs. And although access to charging was one factor, cost was by far the biggest deterrent still. Also, range anxiety and life of the battery were also significant concerns that had caused people to pause on actually buying an EV. So we shouldn't go into this expecting it's a silver bullet. I think that's kind of the main takeaway based on what I'm reading. But it's clearly a factor. It's one of the ones, we can't change the cost of an EV, so we can't alter that. We can't do much about range anxiety. We can't do anything about the life of the battery. So the one thing we can try to help with is getting more EV chargers out there. So I think this is still a good topic for us to be working on and kind of an open playing field in terms of it doesn't seem like anybody's given this a good push yet in Corte Madera. So, yeah, I think we hopefully by next meeting we could have an outline of kind of a campaign and some content for what the outreach might look like. And hopefully we'll have a date with Marine Property Owners Association for Phil's presentation, hopefully with MCE, but I guess more to be revealed. Any additional comments on this topic? No? Phoebe, anything else? Nope. Okay. Very good. So with that, we will move on to the next topic, which is the discussion of the draft environmentally preferable purchasing policy. Say that 10 times fast for Corte Madera.
Before we move on to that, just a volume check. How is the volume for everyone? Does it need to go down further or is it okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So I just have a couple slides and then we'll walk us through the draft environmental preferable purchasing policy, or EPPP. And this is one of staff's work plan items for 2025. It was actually a work plan item last year as well, but didn't get completed, so it rolled over to this year. And what's on the agenda tonight is just to share the draft that was included in the agenda packet and get the committee's feedback on it. So the goal of an EPPP in general is to reduce the environmental impact of town purchases and projects. And as part of that, the document itself provides guidance and clarity for staff that are purchasing items so that they can reduce the environmental impact of town purchases, purchase more environmentally friendly items. The policy also supports several climate action plan goals. It actually completes one of our climate action plan strategies, 1-11, which calls for the town to adopt a sustainable purchasing policy that emphasizes recycled materials and Energy Star certified appliances and office equipment. And then having an environmental purchasing policy is also going to incorporate and help us comply with state laws related to sustainable purchasing, as well as increase eligibility for certain grants that require an established. So the draft that was included in the agenda packet was developed by pulling together lots of bits and pieces from other jurisdictions' purchasing policies or similar policies, as well as reviewing the state policies and regulations that relate to sustainable purchasing and existing town policies and ordinances, of which there are several. And then that draft was reviewed with all town departments and purchasing staff to get their feedback. And now we're at the point of having the Climate Action Committee review and provide feedback. And following this meeting, the next steps for the purchasing policy are to incorporate it by reference into the town's purchasing ordinance and the municipal code. So not the entire document word for word won't be in there, just to allow for flexibility and to keep being able to keep updating the document as new regulations and technologies come into play. But it will be referenced in there as one of the sort of duties of the purchasing manager, or however it's worded in that ordinance. And then, of course, implementation of the policy will be on an ongoing basis. And the idea here is to have an annual review with departments to see where they've made changes, what's been working, what hasn't been working past year, and what the focus areas can be. So I'll bring up the draft in a minute, but just to sort of frame the conversation, looking for your feedback or comments on the purchasing policy, in particular, if it's missing any categories or standards that you feel it should address, whether these standards seem appropriate and impactful or need adjusting, and then any other feedback you might have. So any questions before I bring up the draft?
You want that feedback now or after going through the?
I'll go through it just briefly.
Okay, and then we should allow for public comment as well.
Yeah.
Just a quick question regarding how purchasing is done. Are there set purchasers for each department, or one set purchaser for the town, or do you have a general sense of what that looks like?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it varies throughout town departments and what's being purchased. So for example, for town hall, a lot of the office supplies are purchased by one staff person. So it's more centralized. And I would say that's fairly true across the town in terms of office supplies, like by location. But then some departments, you have more specialized purchases, like Parks and Rec also manages childcare programs. So there's a staff person that purchases specifically for those programs, and then another staff person who purchases specifically for janitorial supplies. So it does vary. Something that we've been looking at as part of this process, and will be part of how the policy is implemented going forward. Any other questions? Okay, so this is the draft. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it. Starts off with what we just covered, the purpose and the climate action plan goals that it incorporates. And then you can see in the table of contents, the first two sort of items here, green business preference and waste reduction and recycling, are more general considerations that apply to all the categories. And then we have the 5 main categories that cover most of the items that the town is purchasing. And then lastly, the section on implementation. So Marin County does run the Green Business Program, which is associated with the California Green Business Network and certifies businesses that have met certain standards in their operation, reducing waste, energy conservation, using more environmentally friendly cleaning supplies. There aren't a huge number of these businesses in Marin currently, so not likely that the town is going to be able to purchase most of its supplies from these businesses, but this is just a reminder to support these businesses when possible. And then in the waste reduction and recycling category, there's sort of general reminders about looking first to buy less and fewer products rather than purchasing additional items if possible, and then considering the lifetime of these items for purchasing, as well as some reminders and resources around recycling. The energy section covers general guidelines around energy efficiency and conservation in town buildings, as well as incorporating the town council's direction to purchase renewable energy for any electricity that's not generated on site at town buildings. Office supplies and equipment. This incorporates one of the major state regulations that relates to our purchasing, which is around recycled content in paper purchases. So this is already in place, and as noted in the staff report, many of the provisions of this policy are already being followed by staff. Miscellaneous office supplies. There's also some guidance here around including or sourcing products that have recycled content when possible. These are drawn from the state's Buy Recycled campaign standards. And then for electronic equipment, of course, looking for those machines that consume the least energy possible, and then recycling any e-waste appropriately. There's a section on furniture here, which mainly identifies environmental certifications that purchasers can look for to identify more sustainable furniture products. So those that have low VOCs, if they're wood-based, have sustainably sourced wood products, if they have textile components, and there's some certifications to look for that show that that textile is responsibly produced. And then in the kitchen and cleaning supplies section, this covers dishes and utensils, food and drinks. Again, some certifications here to look for, as well as for cleaning supplies to identify more sustainable products. And then in addition to these certifications, there's also resources for purchasing staff linked in here. These are sort of databases that exist. San Francisco Department of Environment maintains a great one for their purchasing program. It's helpful to identify more sustainable products. In the town vehicle section, the overarching goal here is to purchase as many zero emission vehicles as possible, even when it's not required, but we do have a requirement here by the state that advanced clean fleet regulation. So that information is linked here as well. And then public works products and practices is the longest category. There's quite a lot incorporated in there. So building practices, maintenance materials, road construction and traffic control, and landscaping. And you'll see throughout these, similar to the other section, there's some resources to help purchasing staff identify products. And it's a mix of sort of requirements as well as guidelines. So, for example, following Title 24 state building standards, that's a requirement. Following the Buy Clean California Act standards, that's a requirement for state agencies, but it's not a requirement for us. So it's a guideline that we'd like to follow as much as possible. And then finally, the last section here is dealing with implementation. A lot of this is also going to be connected with the purchasing ordinance and the municipal code, and that's referenced here. And then just recognizing that environmental considerations are just one criteria that staff need to balance when they're making these purchasing decision. So sometimes the product that we'd like to purchase that's the most sustainable is just not available. And so this gives some discretion to department heads to implement while balancing other factors. And I'll stop there and see if there are questions.
Yeah, I have a question before we move to comments. Do you have a sense, I mean, just this is a apples to oranges question, but very roughly of these categories, which has the biggest environmental impact actually, or any sense of the rough order of magnitude here? I mean, from purchasing sort of office supplies for the town hall versus tens of millions of dollars on a construction project that's, you know, funded in part by town money. Do we have any sense of the relative impact of these activities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we don't have, you know, quantification of that because activity-based emissions. So a lot of this is just not something that we have quantified.
And it's not just climate either, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, my gut feeling is that probably, as you're saying, the road construction sort of public works project is probably the biggest impact overall, but yeah, hard to know.
Or landscaping maybe with tree removal and that kind of. Yeah, okay. That was my question. Lots of clarifying questions before we move to comments and discussion. Okay. Is there any public comment?
We do have a hand raised from Jody Tims. So Jody, you can go ahead and give your public comment when you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very impressive. It's looks like a great document. And I know that Fairfax, we did one quite a number of years ago. So I think you said in the beginning, Phoebe, that you looked over or talked to a few towns or cities that already had them in place. I wondered if you would say that again and fill it in a bit if you did. And then just FYI, it's really a little bit hard to hear you. I think your volume comes and goes, so it may be how close you are to the microphone. But I'm eager to hear all that you say, and I'm missing a little bit of it. Everybody on the dais seems fine, but yours is a little up and down with volume. But my question, yeah, just a little bit on the research that you did or the background, because it's beautiful. It looks great.
Great. Thank you, Jody, and thanks for the heads up about the volume. I'll try and speak more directly into the mic.
That's right.
I did review all of the jurisdictions, Marin County jurisdictions, EPPPs that I could locate. And let me see if I still have them up so I could give you a list of what those were. I do believe Fairfax was one of them. Yes. And yeah, so it looks like Fairfax's was adopted in 2014. And then there's also purchasing policies in Novato, San Rafael, Tiburon, and Mill Valley, I believe, updated theirs somewhat recently. I think at some point there was a sort of countywide effort to update these. So there's a lot of similarities between the policies existing in Marin County. So I was drawing a lot from that in development.
Great, thank you.
Any other public comment? Questions? Nope. Okay. In that case, Karen's been waiting with a comment.
Sorry, no, just comment. Yeah, I see a lot of mention of recycled paper in use. Is there any thought to bamboo, paper from bamboo? Isn't that supposed to be better than recycled?
The state with SB 1383 mandates that we purchase post-consumer recycled content paper.
Okay.
At the exclusion of bamboo, I think is what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. I have a few, but Sarah, looks like you got one. Yep.
Yeah, I think this looks really great and does cover some of the key areas that should be included when looking at the operations of the town. a question I have is around the monitoring and reporting after the fact. I wonder if there's a way or if there's been any thought put into how we can track these purchases with this plan or with this policy in place versus before, to be able to see what kind of impact it's making, to inform what kind of changes we could make in different iterations, and to see if it's something that's being well received by purchasers or if there's ways that we can improve it to be more accessible for those who are doing purchases.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're still working out exactly how implementation is going to look. What we want to avoid though is having this create a lot of burden for purchasers. I will say with SB 1383, we are required to track every single paper purchase and keep all of the invoices and submit them to the state, and it's a huge staff time burden. So what we're sort of planning on right now is just having more informal conversations with purchasers on an annual sort of basis, and sort of getting their feedback that way rather than asking people to maintain a lot of documentation on the purchases they're making.
Do you have other question, comment? No? Phil, did you have anything you want to? No?
No, I don't.
I had a similar question to Sarah's around implementation, which was, or more maybe a thought around having a preferred vendor list, supplier lists, I should say, that could be developed to try to avoid the reinvention of the wheel. I'm not sure how many departments we're talking about here or how big of a, purchasing effort this is, but both within the town's operations to have kind of preferred lists, even as you go, just to kind of accumulate these are preferred vendors who've meet the criteria, but potentially to share with, compare notes with other towns and the county, as well as to maybe put together a collective purchasing list that I think, as you mentioned, most people are operating on the same criteria here, in some cases required by statute to do so. So having some commonality might be useful, and I think would aid, excuse me, a bit in the monitoring and compliance, I guess, to make sure that people are actually following this stuff. So it's just a suggestion. As mentioned, there's a lot of mention within there around the recycled content. I didn't hear anything about other toxins, avoiding other toxins like PFAS. So for instance, when you talk about buying furniture, carpeting, anything for the kitchen, PFAS being forever chemicals, as people often refer to them, so PERV or polyfluorinated alkalines. Is there scope to rule out other types of toxins and chemicals that might be embedded in these products?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the furniture in particular, I don't know the details of all of the certifications that were included on there, but some of them are quite comprehensive. So I would assume that they incorporate that. Some of the other standards, I think my sense is that they may have been developed prior to PFAS becoming such a pressing concern. So that's a good point, and I will do that further and see if we can incorporate anything else.
Yeah, and PFAS happens because it's sort of a hot topic at the moment. People are touting the fact that their products are PFAS free. There could well be some other toxin that they're not mentioning that it, contains, but it just more, I guess PFAS is kind of the easy one in quotes at the moment, but more broadly, I think some consideration of other toxins that might be included in the products for buying would be worthwhile. On the green buildings piece, I didn't know if, LEED certification, to the extent that we're building more buildings, if there's sort of there's a little bit about materials and various other things, but I didn't recall reading much about sort of from an architectural point of view and design point of view, making sure that they're more holistically, environmentally friendly structures. Is that part of the scope of this, or is that beyond the scope of what this is meant to capture?
Yeah, the reason I didn't include LEED as a standard here is that it was something that was considered for the town hall building and council opted not to pursue that path. So seems like that's not a direction that council's interested in this time. But I do think if we were to ever embark on another large public construction project like this, I'm sure that would be part of the discussion, but it would be at the council's discretion whether to cost to the project.
Okay. Or it could be some other certification standard, but it just to make sure that I think it would be anyway, but so it's probably a moot point, but to make sure that the sort of overall design of any construction or building project that the town's going to undertake would be led with, environment as one sort of main consideration. On the road construction piece, 2 points. The first was there's some mention of selecting contractors. Well, there wasn't actually, but earlier on in the list, you talked about the sort of green business program. I'm just wondering if when you go to sign up a contractor to, build a overpass or something, big construction project, are we evaluating the environmental credentials of contractors who are doing these projects? Does that fall within the sort of green business credential that was mentioned, or is that a separate evaluation process?
I'm not aware of any construction companies that have been certified under the Green Business Program. The implementation section does call for including the provisions of this policy in RFPs. So it would be incorporated in that sense, but not in the sense I think you're asking of sort of how does the contractor conduct their business operations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I personally would like to see some reference to that we would give preference, all else equal, to a contractor who, both in terms of their own operations, but potentially in terms of the work they're doing, to the extent that they have discretion over it, that they're considering environmental protection attributes, et cetera.
How would you sort of assess that?
I have no idea. No. No, I think
I have a comment on that if I could make one.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that would fall upon the architect who is hired by the town to, build an environmentally sensitive project and specify, how that project, ends up. So it's done with as much with a nod to the environment as much as possible.
Yeah, that's for the project itself. I agree with that. And I assume that, if you're going to do something big like, I don't know, the Paradise, the redesigning the road over there next to a wetland, I assume there was an environmental review that was required. So presumably that was done with that in mind. But in terms of the contractor operations, if there are contractors who are using EVs or they're making some other intention to limit the economic impact of their own operations, I think that'd be worth taking into consideration. I said I have no idea, but I think in practice I'm sure there's a fairly standardized set of screens you could do against a contractor operation to score them. Probably somebody's already figured that out. So it'd be nice to see that, given that I suspect of all the areas that were mentioned, that this is probably the single biggest environmental impact of what the town does is these big construction projects, that should be a key aspect of the purchasing policy.
Like, for instance, do they recycle their waste? Do they not dump stuff in river? That's what you're referring to, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't legally be able to dump it in a river,
Right.
but I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Are they
just in operation?
Are they using recycled aggregate, for, whatever? So there are, I think, various ways that, and, there probably are contractors who are good at it and make a point of marketing that. So we should take it into consideration if possible. And then the other comment on the public works piece was the mention of high albedo surfaces, which, as you know, was the issue that got me involved in the Climate Action Committee in the first place. I personally would make that a requirement if cost was equal or better. In fact, for those who don't have the background, when they resurfaced the roads here a few years ago, they had not initially, the town did not initially consider trying to do a high albedo material that would reflect more of the sunlight. And upon the suggestion to look into it, it turned out actually they could do it, and it actually saved money to do it because you just avoided adding one more thing to the surfacing material. So I would like to see this be a little more proactive instead of it should be considered. I think this should be the standard policy unless there's a good reason not to. And the idea here obviously is to avoid, reflect as much of the light and energy back out of the atmosphere rather than have it be absorbed, and particularly for urban heat islands and that kind of thing. So I would say not only for the town, ideally, not only for the towns, this is a bit of an aside, but for planning and permitting that, for instance, if you're going to do a giant, renovation at one of the malls and do a new, parking lot surface area, that should be a requirement as well for those properties, because that didn't happen the last time around, which was frustrating. I think those are those are all my comments.
Thank you for your feedback.
Anything else on this item? No. Okay. Thank you, Phoebe. Looked like a lot of work. Thanks for putting that together. What's the path to implementation on that?
So the incorporation into the municipal code is expected to happen late summer or fall, but we'll likely start working towards implementation ahead of that, and just meeting with each department and seeing where they think they can make improvements in the next year or so. As mentioned in the staff report, some of the items like paint, there's not a whole lot of availability right now, so that's going to be something that we'd have to keep checking in on.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we are on to item C, which is discussion of the Student Ambassador Program. Over to you, Sarah.
Excellent. I'll take it away. Yeah. So my goal with this assessment was to look at the current student ambassador role description and assess if we should continue with the program, and if so, what should be changed, what's working really well, what can we improve, and in order to kind of inform the revised document that's within the agenda packet, I had conversations with members of the committee. I had a great phone call with Sid, who really gave me some great insights, and Phoebe was able to share some background as well. And that really helped me kind of get a sense of some of the key themes that I saw from the members of the committee and the community, with some of the original aspects of the position wanting to remain, that people saw value in having this liaison position between the committee and the student youth voice that currently isn't necessarily being captured as it could. And to be mindful that this is a volunteer role, and to weigh the duties that we have this ambassador doing to both benefit the committee as well as their own development, while being mindful of their time commitments as a student as well. So being mindful of those expectations was something I wanted to prioritize, as well as thinking about ways to make the experience impactful for the student ambassadors. I got feedback that their participation in events and volunteering was something that really stuck with them. And there was also interest from members of the committee to have this ambassador get involved in a project or some kind of actionable task. So while I was looking at the description that's here, a lot of it, for those who are familiar, does remain the same, but there are some key changes. The first one is 2 items that really work to kind of facilitate ways that the student ambassador can serve as a liaison between the committee and the student communities that they're a part of. The first one, which is the 3rd bullet point on here, which is to gather student feedback. is meant to be more of an informal item that can be approached for items that the committee is currently looking at or for topics that the student is interested in, and to serve as a mechanism for students to more informally get feedback from the committees or communities that they're a part of, whether that's conversations or informal polls, but ways for us to kind of get a sense of what that voice is in a more informal setting, while a more formal mechanism for this, which is the fourth bullet point on there, which is to coordinate at least one student-driven feedback or dialogue opportunity, was something that I wanted to include to really have at least one actionable sort of project that the student ambassador will take on that will directly serve their liaison role. And this is a session that they'll work with a member of the committee to form, which I'll talk about more in a moment. But this is an opportunity for us to really kind of dig in deeper with a topic that's chosen at that time with the student ambassador, to have a formal means of them collecting information and stories and data to be able to aggregate it and then present it to the committee. And using this as an opportunity for them to gain that leadership experience, that public speaking experience, and to be able to serve the interest of the committee by presenting that information in a public forum. Other key changes was to make the term 1 school year with the opportunity to reapply. I also made the change to have this focus as an opportunity for high school students rather than middle school and high school students. And as we scroll down here, currently I'm looking at kind of working to do the recruitment for this position now until the end of the school year to see what kind of interest we can capture as this academic year concludes, to see what we can get from pushing out messaging now to recruit for this position, see if there's anything from the spring recruitment period, kind of marketing that we can pull from in order to see what kind of applications we get, and get a new ambassador started within the new school year in the fall. And if we don't get applications, we can always try again during the next school year. But I think now is a good time to try to push out a messaging, although it may be a quick turnaround. And then finally, within this document, I added guidelines for a member of the committee, which I'll be taking on this role for the time being, to be a facilitator for the student ambassador. And I created this document because I think having structure and clear guidelines for this role can really facilitate its success. So I had a few key points in here. One is to have semi-regular meetings with the student ambassador. There'll be a primary point of contact to get them onboarded to the committee, to get them acquainted with how the meeting structures work and the appropriate times for them to provide comment. I also included times to have a midterm check-in with the ambassador, as well as to ensure that there's a closing reflection meeting before they depart from the position, so we can continue to get feedback and improve the role. And I think those are the major changes. So I'm really interested in hearing feedback, especially from the student members who are in the room or possibly online. Everything here is in its draft form, and I'm really open to getting feedback and making changes. So please don't hesitate to share your thoughts.
Thank you, Sarah. Any public comment on this?
No public comment online at this time.
Sydney, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
Oh, I like it. I think it looks good, and I really like the structure about it, and like kind of designating a project or like something along those lines to the student ambassador. Yeah, I think it looks really good. And if you like I'll talk to people I know and like obviously like try to promote this. And like if you wanted to get something into like the Redwood newsletter, like I can always help get that there. But yeah, I think it looks great. Yeah.
Sitting.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think it looks great. I think we discussed a little bit about, you mentioned the newsletter. We also have our TV channel and I still need to, but I will put you in contact with the people who are in that class and in charge of that news channel. So that can be that's a weekly broadcast to our school. So that can be a consistent way to communicate with students. And yeah, I think the project is really key and the continuous meetings is really key to set up a project and find a specific place where the committee and students' interests meet. I'm still looking for people who are interested in taking the position, and I talked to today some people who can put it in, not in the newsletter, but in the final school broadcast, the opportunity to the application link. It's difficult to find students who, either have both the interest and are, Corte Madera residents, but I'm looking and I'm hoping that maybe some people who are interested in joining the club next year might be interested. Yeah, I think it looks great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. Just like, I think everyone knows this, but like Redwood is a very like competitive and like academically, like it can be rigorous school. So like when implementing a program like this where like the student is expected to like take on a project, I think it's really important to be clear about what is expected so that maybe a student who has taken like a heavy workload in classes is then like aware of what they're supposed to, like how much that they're going to take on by being in a role like this, so that maybe they're not like overdoing it or putting themselves into something that like they might later find out is just not realistic for them. So I think that could be important to add, like just like clear expectations. Yeah.
That reminded me of something I wanted to say that we talked about a little bit, but about it is difficult and unfortunate that it is hard to engage high schoolers in environmental action and in local action like this, but incentive is like a really important thing. It's something we've been talking about as we move into the next year of our club at school and how to increase membership. And so I think I talked to you a little bit about some of the teachers at my school who teach environmental science classes having activity points, which are ways that you can, engage in local action and receive actual boosts in your grade for that. So I think that sort of incentive is really important. And I think I'm pretty sure even I saw this year that local action like this was included as an activity point. But I think to let people know that that's an incentive to get involved and to see if that's something they're interested in.
Yeah, great comment. I was going to ask if there was some way to get credit for it or it's some form. It sounds like there might be. So that's not, yeah.
There's also, like I said, I don't know if you know about this, like the independent science project that like you can take as a class at Redwood. Even, okay, never mind. It's just there's like a class that's under like the science section that like if students sign up, they conduct like their own individual scientific like project. And I'm wondering if like this could like fall under that somehow or like be included, but I'm not sure because there's not high rates of participation around that. So it doesn't really happen very often, like that class, but.
Oh, that's good to know. But if you happen to know what teacher takes the lead on that class, or if there is one, I'd love to connect with them, and maybe it's something we can put into the future iteration of the class as an option.
Yeah.
Because I think finding those opportunities for that real mutual benefit between a student being able to get course credit and serving the community in this way is key. So I'd love to explore that.
I can send you an email with like the information for that class.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Of course.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think also you said there were some projects, sometimes classes that had projects that I think that course and or teacher might be helpful too.
Yeah. So like the environmental science teachers that do activity points and things. Yeah. We can help like to get in contact with those teachers.
And it's kind of a question, because I'm relatively new. Is Redwood High School the primary school that Corte Madera resident students would go to for high school? Are there any other ones, or that's kind of
There's like the smaller alternative schools like San Andreas and Temescal as well, but those are not, they're like more like alternative schools.
Oh, gotcha.
I think is what they're considered.
Okay.
You can
Yeah.
transfer into TAM, right? But I think most students are at Redwood, right?
Yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
unless it's like a private school like
Yeah.
MC or MA.
Well, and that was a question I had. Here it says the student would have to be both a Corte Madera resident and attend a school in Corte Madera. Is that required or what was the reason for that?
Yeah, that's what was included in the original description, but I'm flexible. I don't have necessarily a point of view on, who we accept. I think being a Corte Madera resident probably makes sense, but the school they go to maybe doesn't have to be here if there's other options. Or
I was actually going to say the other, either,
Oh, it's right
in
there.
my view, would be
Yeah.
if they were a student at Redwood, I don't particularly care if they live in Corte Madera for the purposes of getting the word out, but
Yeah.
that would be I don't know if there was a requirement when this was instituted that they both or.
Yeah, I can't recall either what the discussion was around that. I can chat with our town clerk and see if there would be any concerns.
Yeah, I agree because honestly, I think that the amount of people that go to Redwood, like a large portion of them don't live in Corte Madera. Like a lot of my friends live in Tiburon, Sid. Yeah. So I think opening that would probably definitely increase the engagement rates.
Hey, but I guess, so the council has to live in Corte Madera, but we're saying the students don't. I mean, I'm all for getting students involved, but there is that issue. But if it's okay with the town, sorry, go ahead.
I think maybe even just a requirement of one or the other. I think being located
go.
in Corte Madera, either in school or living there. I go to Redwood, but I don't live in Corte Madera. I live in Strawberry and Mill Valley. So, yeah, I think if they just have some sort of something
Yeah,
connecting them to
yeah.
Madera, yeah.
Good point.
And another question, we had talked at some point about the possibility of either having students come to attend this meeting occasionally or having someone from the committee go and present at Redwood, whether it's at the club or at Assembly. I didn't see a mention of that here. Was that kind of a discarded or just an optional, let's see how it goes kind of thing?
yeah, I think certainly not discarded. I think that could be something that I work with the student ambassador with to kind of get their perspectives on ways to engage their community and welcome that idea for them to bring classmates participate in these meetings or of course, more than happy to participate in student activities as well, but to have that come from the student ambassador, from their perspective on what would be most impactful.
Any other comments, feedback, input, etc.? No? Okay. Do you have, from a recruitment point of view, do you have what you need? You've got 3 weeks basically to find a replacement for Sydney.
Do we want to spread it out to private schools, given that if you're a Corte Madera resident, but go to a private high school? I don't know exactly what that recruitment process would look like.
I don't have contact information for other schools. That's something I could look into.
But could it go into the newsletter at least that we're
Yeah.
looking? So any Corte Madera resident or someone who attends school here.
Yeah.
The newsletter won't get somebody who doesn't. But it would get someone who lives here but doesn't go to school here, right?
Yeah, we can definitely include it in the town newsletter.
Are you open to more than one?
Yes, I'm open to more than one. Yes, I think depending on how many applications we get, I'd like to have two if we get good applications, but I think part of it for me depends on how many applications we get and and what schools or communities they represent. For example, if we had two applications, but they were from the same school and attend all the same clubs and perhaps have less disparate groups that they're a part of, where we could really maximize the outreach, then I'd be less inclined than if we had two or even three ambassadors, but they all serve different communities or different aspects of their shared community. So I am open to multiple ambassadors, and I'd like to see what the interest level is, see what we get from this this call for applications.
Be a good problem to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sorry if you.
And Sarah, let's connect after the meeting on the recruitment postings.
Oh, that'd be great.
process.
Perfect. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
This might be a weird question, but does the town have like social media accounts like Instagram or anything like that?
We just have Facebook and Nextdoor,
Okay.
but we could post the recruitment.
Okay.
So the parents who are on those could tell their kids to apply. Okay, good. Thanks a lot, Sarah. That's
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're on to the final item on the agenda. So discussion of potential committee participation in the 4th of July event and the Lions Club car show. Evie wrote up a nice memo on this. Do you want to give us a quick overview?
Yeah, so just to recap the staff report, the committee for the past several years, at least since I've been here, and I think before that as well, has been participating in the 4th of July festival and the Lions Club car show, tabling at those events. And we have been asked to confirm participation, at least in the car show already. They start their planning very far in advance. So the car show this year is on September 13th, which is a Saturday, from 11 to 3. The 4th of July is, of course, on the 4th of July, which is on a Friday this year. And so the ask here, questions for the committee, is whether you'd like to continue participation in one or both of these events, and whether that participation would include sort of the committee's existing tabling materials, which I included some images of the setup that the committee's had in the past. We have some sort of infographics, as well as QR codes going to our website with information, and a set of flyers that we have already available for these events. Last year for the car show, the committee did develop sort of a new set of materials, some additional infographics with information about EV adoption. We had a sign up asking for feedback on potential locations for public EV charging stations. So if the committee would like to develop new materials such as those, that does require more time and would increase the level of effort needed to participate in these events. Or the committee could just decide to participate with existing materials, which would have a lower level of preparation needed. However, there's still a need to identify volunteers to staff the table either way. And we'd need probably 3 or 4 volunteers for each event. In the past, we've done sort of setup and morning shifts, and then afternoon takedown shift. So having at least 2 people there for each shift seems to be sort of ideal.
Any public comment on this? No? You're looking for committee input here, did you?
I'll speak here. So people know I've only attended one car show. And I think, as Phoebe had noted, there was relatively little contact, although having a car show that has EVs certainly does intersect. But nonetheless, we didn't reach that many participants. However, and I've never done the 4th of July, it seemed that there was a lot more interaction. And that's kind of a short time window. we have, I think, what I would support would be to do it. We have some communication materials, some slides, things. I think people want to just grab things. We have our postcard from last year. Maybe we just, the idea is to keep it simple or whatever, but maybe we do the 4th of July. And if we don't have a lot of staff, maybe we have shorter hours, but the most trafficked hours and just a few messages. I didn't find the table, that with kids who could draw that. I didn't find that effective, although maybe that does, you are interacting with the community, but rather I think our messages that are quite clear about climate action, are things that I think I could really get behind. Also, I know I'm away on the 13th, so I couldn't do the car show.
Yeah, I agree that I think attending the 4th of July event could be a good way to get our name out there, to show people that we exist and that there's ways that they can engage as a green resident of the community. And it could be a way for us to highlight residential participation in the Resilient Neighborhoods Initiative, to highlight some of the things that we're working on. During my time living in Corte Madera, I've really gotten an appreciation just for how many nonprofits and organizations that are in the area too that serve different niche interests within climate sustainability. And I think it could also be an opportunity to just share the resources that exist for people to learn from and to kind of choose different ways that they can engage. So I think that would be a worthwhile event to participate in, and I would be happy to volunteer. And if we have our new student ambassador by then, I think it would be a great way to kind of get them started and to participate in kind of a high visibility event, so to speak. For the car show, do I understand from the document that it would be $5,000 for us to participate? No? Oh, that was...
No. So the $5,000 was related to the participation of the nonprofit Ride and Drive Clean that the committee has partnered with in the past for the outreach, but there's no cost for the committee to participate.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, not knowing the, how effective that event has been for us in the past, I see perhaps less impact for us at the car show than I do for 4th of July. Although if the committee decided, I'd be willing to support both. But my vote would be for participation in the 4th of July event.
I went to 2 car shows. It was both with my mom, so it was something to do with the committee. And I remember like a lot of people coming up and asking a lot of questions. My mom brought her car and like parked it and talked to people. I remember a lot of engagement, honestly, but it was also a while ago. And then I know she also did the 4th of July event. I didn't go, and I remember she said that there were like a lot of people were stopping by, and that's also a good way to like, because like a lot of kids go to the 4th of July parade, so it's like also like you were saying a good way to like just like more outreach. But yeah.
Bill, did you want to comment? You're on mute still. There you go.
Okay, yeah, I think these events are very worthwhile. Even though you don't perceive necessarily a lot of engagement with the greater community, they pique, even if you can pique the curiosity of one or two people about it, I think it's worthwhile. And I'm happy to volunteer for either or both events.
There you go. That's what we're waiting for. That's great. Thank you, Phil. Good. That's good feedback. I mean, I tend to agree. I think the 4th of July gets a lot of foot traffic in my observation. So that feels like one that's worth doing from a visibility point of view. And then if we have some key messages we can reinforce. I was less convinced about the auto show based on my experience. I think I've done it 2 years and the foot traffic was low, and our overlap in terms of people being there who are car enthusiasts or interested in cars, we didn't have much to talk about because we were promoting heat pump hot water heaters last year. This year, we're promoting EV chargers in multi-tenant houses. So I sort of feel like maybe we can make more of a try to bind that message to the event a little better. And even if it's, people who live in multi-tenant housing and say, hey, just so you're aware, there are these promotions, talk to your landlord or your property manager. Maybe we can get a little more traction this year. So from my point of view, I think it's worth doing, supposing that we have the volunteer capacity to do it. Sounds like we've got a few people who've already said they're willing to do it. So, and I would as well. So I guess, although we have our doubts, I think sometimes about the effectiveness of these things, I think not doing it feels like, it's a little bit outside of what we're supposed to be doing as a climate action committee in town. So I think we should have a presence.
If we do the 4th of July, though, I think we need to get on the messaging or what we're
Yeah.
going to hand out sort of ASAP, maybe have a few people
Yep.
together. Yeah.
Would you like to be part of that?
I know. As soon as I bring it up, I'm sort of part of it. Let me think on that. Yes,
Okay.
I'll try and start that. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help. Yeah, we're happy to
Right.
do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah.
Because I think in developing the content regarding the postcard for the EV chargers, making a
Yeah.
large poster or something that like you did last year would be
Simple
great.
message. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if the two of you would be willing to lead that charge, that'd be great. Good. Okay. Well, so I would say we had a couple of folks, I didn't jot down who was saying what dates, but maybe Phoebe, you could follow with an email to everybody and just try to get people signed up for volunteering slots. So we have as much of that baked in as we can. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. So updates and reports, starting with staff updates.
All right, just a couple updates. The revised recommended street tree list was adopted by town council at their May 6th meeting. So that completes that work plan item related to updating the street tree list. And it's anticipated to be used primarily by homeowners as a resource if they would like to plant or replace a street tree to make sure that that new tree is infrastructure safe and appropriate and will do well in Corte Madera's climate. And then also will be used by public works staff for projects that involve planting street trees, as well as provided during sidewalk program projects. And then on the next council meeting, which will be June 3rd, staff are planning to bring a letter of opposition to AB 306 to the council. This is a state bill that's been proposed this session that would prohibit any updates to the state or local building codes for the next 8 years. And it's being packaged with other wildfire recovery bills for the LA fires, but it does apply statewide and it applies to both new buildings and existing buildings. And there's very limited exemptions. So I can send out more information about that as well if anyone is interested in submitting a comment of their own it's going to the Senate Housing and Local Government Committees in mid-June.
On behalf of, the letter would be on behalf of.
The letter that will be going to town council is will be for council to consider having the mayor authorize and sign on behalf of the town.
Got it. And so you want this committee's input on that?
Not necessarily, but if the committee is interested and if individuals would like to also provide comment or participate in the process, I'll just send out information about the bill.
Okay.
That it does it would impact obviously our local reach codes and our ability to adopt any local reach codes for the next several years.
Is this something that's we've done before, the town has done before, submitting letters of either support or protest for state legislation?
We did submit a letter, I believe it was last year, to the state about the building code encouraging all electric requirements in the next code cycle, which they did not implement.
CP, what's the real purpose behind this? It's just to keep building codes constant for a while, or what's the?
Yeah, that's the stated intent of the bill, is to reduce construction costs, increase housing supply, and support rebuilding.
You said that's a stated. Would there be any other?
Well, the position that's outlined in the letter is that there's no evidence to support that freezing the building code would actually have that effect. And that's all that I have for staff updates.
Okay, well, I wanted to mention, as I think everybody knows, we're in the middle of an appointment cycle for the committee. So Karen, Phil, and myself have all, I believe, submitted our applications for reappointment. That hasn't happened yet. I'm not quite sure what meeting that's a June meeting, probably for town council, where they'll make those decisions. Yeah. And we do have a vacancy on the committee, which is, as you heard, that committee member Reed has stepped down. So if anybody knows anybody who you think might be interested in joining the team here, please mention it to them. Yeah. And we also planning to, we're not going to do a particular outreach on that, as you said.
To be determined.
Okay. Might be worth having in the newsletter again, just that there's a vacancy if people are interested. Okay. Any other committee members want to give an update on anything? No. Look at Phil. No. Okay. In that case, future agenda items. It sounds like we ought to have first one repeated again. So multifamily EV charger for sure. Next meeting. I don't think we got what you needed on the EPP, right?
Yes. Thank you.
EPPP. Student ambassador program. Sarah, would you like to give us
Yeah, I can give an update to see what the
recruitment update?
kind of applications we got and yeah, what that's looking like. Yeah.
Yep. And I think we've discussed the participation here. Maybe just we could have as an update what the volunteer situation looks like, Phoebe. And well, I suppose if you want to update on content or for those. Yeah. Okay.
Something's.
All right. So let's keep that as an agenda item as well. Anything else that we need to add? No. Okay. Well, there's opportunity to add to the agenda, obviously, prior to the next meeting. So if you have thoughts, please send them to Phoebe and myself for consideration. And seeing no further comments, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.